हेलो हाय गाइस हेलो एक बार चीयर कर लो यार खुद के लिए यार फॉर बीइंग अ पार्ट ऑफ दिस अमेजिंग कम्युनिटी वो गिव इट अप फॉर ऑल द स्पीकर्स इन्होंने इतना अच्छा अच्छा टॉक दिया यार हमारे लिए है ना गिव इट अप यार ताली बजाओ बेसिकली तो नाउ आई एम हियर टू कॉल आवर नेक्स्ट स्पीकर हु इज वन ऑफ माय फेवरेट ठीक है ऑब्वियसली ही इज आदित्य ठाकुर हु हैज अ कम्युनिटी ऑफ 10K subscribers and 2K members on Discord and I'm one of them. I'm hashtag team Aditya. एक बार हाथ उड़ा लो बहुत सारे हैं यार फैन फॉलोइंग बहुत है तुम्हारी है ना so he is a developer advocate at 100ms and he'll be speaking on Raspberry Pi X Flutter. So now it's time to call our speaker. Give it up for Aditya Thakur. Whoa!
Awesome. Yes, thank you so much, Ashish, for that wonderful introduction. I am Aditya. I am really excited to be here today to talk about Raspberry Pi and Flutter. Okay, so I hope everything is working fine right now. As already mentioned, I currently work as a developer advocate at 100ms. I am a creator. I make YouTube videos around Flutter. I just want to ask out of curiosity, how many of you have seen me on YouTube, like seen a video? Awesome, amazing. Thank you so much for that. I run a community of 2,000 plus developers where we majorly talk about Flutter. Some of them are here in the crowd, as already mentioned. I've previously been a speaker at DevFest Kolkata. I will be speaking at a few DevFest this year. And I'm a contributor to the Flutter repository, the Flutter Plus plugins, and the Flutter Fire, where I have worked on the Hindi translation. So if you use those, it's probably done by me. And I like to do cool things that matter. That is the main motive behind this talk as well. And if you haven't joined our Discord, you can go over to adityathakur.in/Discord and join us there. So Flutter, we are all mostly here as Flutter developers. It can be used on a plethora of platforms already. So you can build apps for Android as well as iOS. Most of you must be doing that. So how many of you have built for Android and iOS? Yes. Awesome. Nice. We can build for web. Web is relatively new, it was new year. I started out with Android and iOS, then I moved to web. Then I started building apps for macOS because I got a Mac. I've also worked on a few Windows applications, but never had the chance to publish one. And I have never worked on Linux. So that is, I think that was until some time ago. And I want you to keep this platform in mind throughout this talk as we go through it. So out of curiosity, how many of you had a chance to work on Linux apps here? Okay, not as many apparently. So we'll be talking about how do you build apps on Raspberry Pi. So Raspberry Pi, to be specific, this is like a microcontroller. We call this a Raspberry Pi. For my talk, I have used a Raspberry Pi 4. Model B that I have worked on, experimented with, and made this talk on. And to be very brief about it, what it is, it's a very cheap computer that runs Linux on it. And you can buy it off Amazon. I got mine for around 7K. You can get it for even cheaper, 5 to 10K range. Get a Raspberry Pi 4. It will be a single board computer that runs Linux on it. And it also gives you access to do a bunch of modifications using GPIO pins. So you'll have general purpose input-output pins that would let you control some electronic devices. You can attach some sensors to it, get some data, process that inside your applications that we'll build with Flutter. So this would help you explore a bunch of IoT things and make cool demos, much like this one. This is an open source rover that was created by NASA. So this is a fun project to do. If you are in college, if you will add something with Raspberry Pi to it, I think it can go a long way. We'll quickly talk about the hardware setup because my talk is 15 minutes. I'll majorly talk about how do you get started. I'll take you there, the steps, the problems that I faced, and then we can go on to talking about, how do you go forward from there. So again, the first requirement is definitely getting a Raspberry Pi. You can get one of Amazon, as I already mentioned. We'll also need a power supply. So Raspberry Pis would generally come in a box. So I have one box right here. It is just a single Raspberry Pi in a box, and I didn't know that it did not come with a power supply, but it generally takes in a USB-C. So you can connect it with your mobile phone, although I wouldn't recommend that. But there is a recommended power supply voltage / current that is required, which is mentioned in the slides as well. And you'll need a micro SD card. So the micro SD card would be required because there is no storage on Raspberry Pi. So you need to be able to use SD card to add some data to it. And then there are a bunch of other things that I got, which would also be available on the booth that we have for FlutterConf India, where this whole setup would be available. So I have a digital monitor to see the output of the Raspberry Pi. I have a keyboard and a mouse that are USB connected. A HDMI cable, because we also need to get data. And then there is an adapter that converts this HDMI to a micro HDMI. And going forward from here, we'll also talk about the software setup really quickly. So once you have your Raspberry Pi, you'll take a micro SD card. You will put it in an adapter, connect it to your Mac OS device. So I have a Mac here. I'll just connect it there. And then I'll have to run something called a Raspberry Pi imager. So I'll take my Raspberry Pi OS from the web, and I'll have to put it inside my micro SD card, which I will then insert into my Raspberry Pi device. So this is what the imager looks like. It gives you a bunch of configurations to do. One is selecting the device that you are using. So if I am on Raspberry Pi 4, I would select that. If I have a Raspberry Pi 3 or some previous versions, I can use that. Raspberry Pi 5 is the latest one. But I could only get Raspberry Pi before this talk, which was the 4 Model B, and that is the one that I'm using. And then you can also select what operating system you want to install on it. So these are all Debian-based Linux operating system. And I went with the 64-bit. And then you will do a bunch of configuration steps, like selecting, doing a yes here, like it will delete all the previous data, and put that Raspberry Pi OS inside your micro SD card. So now we'll take our Raspberry Pi, because this was the initial configuration steps with the software are all done on our Mac OS. So you connect a adapter, you do that with the imager, and then we have our Raspberry Pi. We'll put in our micro SD card. We'll add a power supply. We'll take a HDMI to micro HDMI cable that we need to connect, and then we'll also need the keyboard and mouse, which we'll use to go forward in the steps. So it's a lot of configuration steps involved, but it's totally worth it after you do it. And from there, we'll run the Raspberry Pi. The display that you have connected using HDMI would show something like this. This would be welcome to this new desktop. And from here, we can go forward. One thing we'll need to do is connect the Wi-Fi. I'll come back to it, why we need the Wi-Fi setup and everything. But we'll do that, and we'll have something like this on the screen, which is setup complete, which would it would take to take that OS image, get it to our Raspberry Pi, and show something on display. So once we have that, you'll have a screen, something like this. It will be the Raspberry Pi operating system running on your Raspberry Pi, connected to a display using micro HDMI cables and all that. So now, how do you run Flutter on it? So this was all the configuration steps before we come to the actual part of it. So you can download Flutter on this Raspberry Pi module using something called snaps. It's a very simple setup. Like you can run a bunch of commands, which is like sudo app install snapped, and then you will have to install core. This is all happening inside this desktop itself. So you'll see like there is also a terminal option available here, which you can run these commands that we'll get working by the internet that we had connected it earlier. And then there is a simple install command, which is snap install Flutter. And once you do that, you will have Flutter running on a Linux distribution on your Raspberry Pi. And then you can ideally go around building apps for this Linux OS. That would be it. So coming back again. So I have a Raspberry Pi setup done and configured on the booth at FlutterConf booth there. So you can come check us out, come over there, and then we can maybe run your apps that you want on the Raspberry Pi that we have and do more of that. So yeah, thank you so much. That was it for my talk. It was a short 15-minute brief. And I think after this, we'll break for lunch. So that would be the first half of the conference. So thank you so much, guys.